Hey, deserving listeners, Darcy and Stacey, season 4. Why did I say it like that? I don't know. Let's watch.
Hi, Darcy.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Pleasure. You look beautiful.
Thank you. Likewise. Come on in.
I found this matchmaker, Michelle, online, and she has a very high success rate in matching couples. She's matched up, celebrities and high-profile people. She's also a dating coach.
Okay, so one, I would just recommend that if you ever see marketing materials from a business that claims a certain percentage success rate, I would look at the research regarding that, independent outside research, because anyone can claim that sort of thing. The reason why I say this is because science and research is not something that everyone understands. And so understanding that is, I think, important for everyone to understand. Like, one of the things that I would run into is when I was treating teenagers 20 years ago. Back then, I had a pretty wide variety of clients, some of which would be teenagers and their parents. Some of the teenagers would be having a lot of behavior problems, and the parents would be contemplating taking drastic action. And one of the things they would look into were boot camps or these therapeutic group homes to send their kid to. Sometimes they'd have to hire goons to kidnap the kid in the middle of the night. Watch all my reaction videos to the Paris Hilton documentary that I made a few years ago. It involves all that kind of thing, if you don't know about it. And what I would see were the marketing materials that were being sent to the parents, because they would show me that the flyer or something. I'd be like, look at this. And the flyer would say, we have 97% success rate with our teenagers. If you send our kid here, if you send your kid to us and we have 9 months of residential treatment of this kid, 97% success rate, that kind of thing. And I knew that had to be dubious, that had to be false, or the cherry-picked data that they used to establish that claim was a problem. So because I had seen so many times kids going to these therapeutic group homes or these boot camps and not improving upon being discharged or released from these places. They might be able to get them to comply to the rules, particularly in some jurisdictions. I remember a lot of kids were sent to Utah, because I believe Utah had much more lax regulations regarding what you can do to teenagers in a group home like that, but also overseas to other countries, because other countries might even have no regulations in terms of what you can do to kids, or very little regulations. And so, sure, you could discipline a child as if they're basically a prison inmate and harm them in ways, and they would harm them. In other countries, for example, you could use physical punishment on these teenagers at will. So, you're terrified. You're basically in a prison, and you're being coerced to comply with the rules. So yeah, you would probably find that the vast majority of kids would comply under that fear. But when they get out, guess what? They carry with them not only the trauma of what they went through in those group homes, but also tremendous anger and resentment towards their parents for sending them there, and at authority in general. And guess what? When you have that much anger at authority and that much resentment towards your parents, then their behavior becomes completely unmanageable and problematic after being released from these places. So anyway, Darcy is saying that this individual has this really high success rate. Maybe that's based on sound science. I don't know. I would have a hard time believing that, because matchmaking, I've looked into the science on it, because we've looked into this for decades. If we had an ability in psychology to be able to determine the likelihood of two people not only being attracted to each other, but having a long relationship that has a lot of satisfaction. If we had that ability, that would be a huge skill or a huge tool available to the public or to our clients or whatever. And there's been a lot of research looking into this, a lot of different angles of personality testing, preference testing, all these kinds of. There's been a lot of money and a lot of funding that has been poured into the research, not only just from psychology, normal vectors of funding, but also the websites like Match.com and eHarmony and these other places have also spent, because they get a lot of money, they have a lot of money to burn on this kind of thing. They've spent a lot of money on research as well. And long story short, the science demonstrates that we do not have a strong ability or even a minor ability to predict if two people are going to be attracted to each other and they're going to last in a satisfactory relationship with each other. Because it's really those two things. When you're matchmaking, you're trying to determine, are these two people going to be attracted to each other? And two, are they going to sustain along, because you could be attracted to someone but not want to date them past 3 dates or that kind of thing. So to answer those questions we've looked into, and people do not have that ability. Now, might there be some kind of art form that this individual has developed over time to be able to do that? Maybe, but anyone can claim that. Now, what can happen is that if you go to a matchmaker and this is placebo, and you believe they are very good at what they do, or even Match.com or whatever people use these days, Bumble, is that a thing? And you believe that the algorithm is such that they actually will match you up with someone that will work out with you. That might be a placebo such that you actually interpret everything on the first date and beyond in a positive way. You think, well, the algorithm said that we're perfect for each other, so even though I don't feel it right now, I'll just act as if that is true and persevere through this relationship. And then because you did that, you get over certain milestones, and then by the time the placebo wears off, you're actually in a relationship and things actually kind of work out randomly. Might that happen? Sure. Another thing is, to be a good matchmaker might actually not involve being able to predict if two people will be in a good relationship together, and might have more to do with essentially coaching someone on how to date and how to think about dating, right? You'll see that happen in a lot of professions, like massage therapists, for example. Someone might go to a massage therapist because they have back pain, and I'm just saying this is a for instance. I don't know if this has ever happened, but this is what popped in my head. And the massage therapist, on paper, what is happening is the massage therapist is providing a medical treatment for the back pain to relieve the back pain. But what's really happening is that the client is taking time for themselves. The client might be talking. The massage therapist might be listening really well. There's a lot of attention for an hour or 90 minutes that is given to the client in a way that might not be normal for the client to go through. And so the back pain is relieved, but it's because of the stress of the stress that's being relieved as by the sheer fact that no one else is bothering them. The client is able to relax. The client is being heard. So it's not the actual massage that's helping the person. It's the other things around the massage. So it's possible that people go to a matchmaker and there's a lot of other things involved in that activity that are actually the elements that actually contribute to success in dating afterwards, and not her magical ability to matchmake.
I feel like she's going to be able to teach me how to date differently. It's going to be like a boot camp for sure.
I'm so happy that you called us, and you gave me a little bit, information in terms of your relationship history, who it is that you're looking for. So I want to start with preferred age range of the gentleman you want to date.
Like...
You have 25 to 40.
Oh, I did? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Darcy said a little bit ago that she's 47, which I forgot how old she was. And then on the profile, she filled out that she wanted to date someone 25 to 40. And it sounds like the matchmaker is disapproving of that range. It does, people can have whatever preference they want to have. And the show really focuses on age. There was actually a scene that was a little concerning with her kids, where Darcy was saying she was going out on a date with that guy that she ended up breaking up with that was around her age. And so the daughters were like, "Oh, you're going on a date tonight. How old is he?" And Darcy was like, "He's my age." And the elated outburst, the happiness outburst from the kids was shown. They were just like, "Oh my God, this is great. She needs to stop dating babies." She needs to, that they use that term on the show. And, age difference is something to consider for sure, but these shows focus on, it's almost just like they reduce everything down to money and age and where you live, I suppose, whether it's in a different country, this kind of thing. And sure, think about that. And those factors could play a role in the attractiveness and the success of a relationship, the attractability between two people. Because, people do come to me for help along these lines, not specifically, but it can be a component of the set of things that they want therapy for. And so someone might, present this way, and I might actually enter into a conversation that's kind of like this. It's like, okay, well, do you want to talk about this in this way? And they're like, yes, okay, well, let me ask you some questions. What's your age range? And if a 47-year-old woman said, I want, my preference is 25 to 40, I might ask, why is that? Why do you determine it that way? As a way of trying to determine if there's some false notion in there, like, well, people my age are stupid, or I don't know, which we would dismantle. So I might ask that, but I certainly wouldn't start on the assumption that this individual is problematic in some way, that there's something deeply wrong with it, that there's no way to work with that. Now, I think it's very probable that, and maybe they'll get to it, that for Darcy, the reasons why she is determining 25 to 40 are not conducive to her needs ultimately. That she is determining that based on, I don't know, I could see a lot of different possibilities. One is that she wants the person that she's dating to be dependent on her because she believes that no one will want to be with her unless they're dependent on her. I don't know if that's really the case, but you can imagine someone having that issue. Or she thinks that she needs someone to look good at her side. She doesn't want someone older who looks old and isn't attractive and fit and young and thin or muscly or whatever. And so I need them to look good because I'm primarily concerned with how things look to the outside. I can certainly imagine that. Or she thinks that younger people are more interesting or cooler or more with it, more hip or something. Or she doesn't want to deal with someone else's health problems, and she thinks younger people aren't going to have that on average. I don't know. I could see a lot of different. What do you think? Why do you think Darcy would say that 25 to 40? Another factor that just popped in my head is that she might be in denial of her age. Some people actually, when they start going online dating, is they see people their age on Tinder or something, and they're like, oh, that person's too old, that person's too old, that person's too old. And they don't realize, well, you're old. Because our society is so phobic and stigmatizing about aging, particularly for women, that there's a lot of reasons to go into denial about the reality of time.
Okay. I'm going to say, Darcy, that you are 47. The two guys that you last were involved with were in their 30s.
So right off the bat, that's a huge problem to just look at that factor as to why the relationship didn't work. I mean, one, age had nothing to do with it as far as I could tell. Two, it was everything that Darcy did. It had nothing to do with Georgie. With Tom, who knows? So Tom was that much younger than her? Anyway, Georgie was significantly younger, right? And Jesse was too, right? Yeah, I think Jesse was even younger than that. Anyway, point is that for everyone to focus on that, including this professional, I think is misguided. Now, could the matchmaker say, look, if you're going to want to be successful and find your soulmate, I think you might want to broaden that out a little bit because you're really limiting yourself when you say that age range. That's what I would say to someone, honestly, without knowing anything about them. I'd just be like, unless you have a really solid reason as to why you're limiting your options that way, I wouldn't recommend it, because if you're trying to fall in love and spend the rest of your life with a soulmate, you need as many options as you can get. What if the one is 41 years old or 51? You don't want to exclude those people.
While you've been in your 40s and you're still in your 40s, it hasn't worked out.
And that's all you got. I mean, I don't know. That's your thesis of the answer to Darcy's problems, is that she needs to date someone around her age, that somehow that's going to solve. No, I don't think that's going to solve it. It might randomly coincide with a match that actually works, but can we imagine Darcy taking responsibility, apologizing for her issues, not focusing on weird things like money in a sock, not being influenced by Michael and Stacey, who seemingly might have an interest in Darcy failing. I just don't see age being the primary factor.
I've always dated a bit younger. I think the younger guys for me keep me on my toes. Just bring a little heat to my life.
Okay, so we're hearing at least one of the reasons why she wants to date someone younger, because they keep her on her toes and they provide heat. So is that sexual attraction, which I can't believe I didn't mention earlier as an option, because that, of course, makes sense. Also, keep me on my toes. I want someone younger that isn't old and set there. Could someone her age keep her on her toes? Absolutely. Could someone her age have heat in the relationship? Absolutely. So to exclude those people, I don't think is very wise.
I mean, don't really have to set a limit on it as long as they, take care of themselves.
Dating men 20 years younger tells me there's a part of her that I feel doesn't believe in her self-worth, and so she's seeking it through relationships.
Okay, interesting. So she's saying dating someone younger is evidence of her lacking self-worth. I mean, yeah, but where's the how does she connect those two? I mean, I guess I would connect those two things potentially. Maybe this is what the matchmaker means, that to date people that are a lot younger, you are dating people that you believe to be so different from you that you're not really connecting, you're not really in the same ballpark, and therefore you're always going to be older and have more power or something, and something along those lines. I don't know what she's saying there.
So I think the challenge is helping her reframe her mindset and be vulnerable. Now, you had sent over a couple of photos.
Yeah.
All right. I gotta be honest with you about the photos that you sent. Okay. I just feel like it's not the right representation of you.
Okay, interesting. I'm sure as a matchmaker, she probably runs into this a lot, that people will submit pictures that are not representative of what they really look like in real life. And so she is confronting her on that, and yeah, that's great. Now, I would imagine that all you'd have to do in the profile is say, watch Darcy and Stacey, the TV show. I think all you have to do, although maybe the matchmaker doesn't want to expose potential dates to that data, but anyway, yeah. So this is another thing. It's a product of a lot of things that I've already talked about in relation to this, but to be specific, we will oppress people who get older. I mean, you'll find people on this show sometimes, they'll be 25 and they're showing age of being 25, meaning they're no longer 15, and they're already having procedures done to their face and their body because they're starting to look like they're not 15 anymore. And each to their own. Everyone can make their own choices as to what they want to do with their bodies, for sure. But the premise is, of course, known to us that, particularly for women, if you age past 18, it's just a fast decline into disgustingville and irrelevancy, and that's a problem. So those messages are a problem. We all have to fight against them, like all the time. And if you don't, then you will succumb to it. And so I think that a lot of people will have a lot of pressure to try to portray themselves in a way that avoids the fact that they look a certain way, I guess I'll say. And one of the ways that we cope with it is to go into denial. We will potentially say, I'm not old, and that picture is the way that I look. Yeah. And that other picture that might actually be the way that you look, that's not me. That's a disgusting picture of me, because I can't tolerate the notion that I actually look the way that I look. I mean, it's really, I've talked about this before. One of the most destructive elements in our society is this notion, and it causes and they've run studies on this that I can't remember the exact percentage, but something like the vast, vast majority of people, regardless of gender, are disgusted and ashamed of their body and their face and their age. I mean, we're doing this to ourselves. We socially construct these cultural notions together. It's not like some alien imposed this idea on us to torture us. We're doing this to ourselves, and we can choose to change it. We can choose to reject it, and we don't. There's movements, obviously, and there are, people who stand up against this all the time. Lindy West being one that comes to mind, a local hero of mine. But to me, it seems to be getting worse. There are definitely shining examples of body positivity for sure that didn't exist 30 years ago. But the amount of shaming and things that people feel like they have to do, particularly women, to stay up to date with anti-aging procedures and stuff is far greater than it was. One of the things about getting older is you see cultures change. You see your culture change. And I have seen my culture change from the 70s to the 80s. Were those elements present in the past? Yes, but it is times 100, no joke right now. So if you are not actively fighting against these notions, you will become a victim of it. And even if you are actively fighting against it, you will still be victimized by it. So I think for sure Darcy is a part of that thing, right? And we can imagine what behaviors we might see as a result of that, including submitting pictures that don't represent who she actually really is. All right, well, that is it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.